Justin Haley will not return to Spire Motorsports in 2026, and Matt DiBenedetto is out of Viking Motorsports effective immediately. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2025 Brand Pumpkin scheme that I believe we'll see this weekend at Talladega. I like the look of this car, to be honest. I've been a big fan of a lot of the brand schemes we've seen from Junior Motorsports. This one's no exception. It does look really good. Love the colors. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Talladega. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Carson Osterbar's 2025 Moto Casino scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. I like the pink look to this car. I think it's really good. I think Spire knocked this one out of the park. The colors pop. They look good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Talladega. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Buescher's 2025 Thomas scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. I like the look they've got for the car this weekend. I think it's alright. It's not spectacular, but I think it's alright look to the car. Love that Thomas is back working with Chris Buescher. I think it looks pretty solid. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Haley's 2025 Gainbridge Parity scheme that I believe we're going to see this weekend at Talladega. This is actually a different look to the normal Gainbridge scheme that we see a lot of times. It's got more of a yellow look to the car. I think it looks all right. We'll talk about Justin just a little bit at the end of the episode, but I think the car actually looks fine. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Nemechek's 2026 Rexel scheme that we'll see next year at Richmond. This is one of the first 2026 schemes we have seen so far this year. They'll be joining Legacy Motor Club. Cool to see a sponsor finally announcing a new one coming in this sport, and I think the car actually does look pretty good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2025 Jack Link's non-vegan scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. I like that we keep having new looks for the Jack Link's car. I honestly think this one does look pretty good. I like the colors of this one. One of the better Hayek Motorsports cars we've seen. I think it does look pretty good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Denny Hamlin's 2025 National Dep Relief scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. This is based off a fan vote that they had a couple weeks back. They've chosen this one. This is probably not my favorite National Dep Relief car. I think some of them looked okay. This one doesn't look great, to be honest. One of my least favorite Denny Hamlin paint schemes we've seen so far this year. It doesn't look great. The colors don't pop on this one that much. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cole Custer's 2025 Cisco scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. This is in partnership with RFK Racing, of course. Of course, remember, the Haas factory team does right now have an alliance at RFK. This one looks okay, but is not spectacular in my opinion. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christian X's 2025 Morshia scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. This one's okay in my opinion. I think the colors do work decently on this one. There's some good look to it. It's not spectacular though, but I think the colors on this one do look okay. It's a decent one. Looking forward to on the racetrack this weekend at Talladega. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about South Point. As it was announced on Sunday that South Point has officially extended their deal with Las Vegas Motor Speedway through the 2028 season. They will continue being the entitlement sponsor for the Fall Las Vegas race through 2028. South Point has been the entitlement sponsor, I believe, since around 2018 or 2019. Of course, they've had association NASCAR for many years with the Gone family owning the South Point Casino brand. I think it's good they're going to be continuing being involved in the sport, and it probably will go past 2028 at this point. I think it's really good that South Point will continue being in the sport past for the next couple years. I think their deal was up for this year, so good to see South Point will continue being in the sport and will continue being the entitlement sponsor for the second Las Vegas race through the 2028 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Las Vegas Bull Ring. As it was announced, I believe on Friday going into Saturday, that Kevin Harvick, Tim Huddleston, and Spears Manufacturing will manage the Las Vegas Bull Ring from 2026 through 2027. I believe there was an old management group that was managing the Las Vegas Bull Ring for I believe like 2022 up to like 2025. And now you've got the Cars West Tour series that'll be managing that starting next year. This is a really big deal having Kevin Harvick get involved and having Tim Huddleston and his group over there. I would also expect the ARCA West series to be involved with this in some way, shape, or form in 2026 and 2027 as well. I think this is a really, really big deal to have Kevin Harvick involved and putting his investment in a company like this. I think that's a huge deal. I think it's really cool nonetheless to see that Kevin Harvick will be involved in managing the Las Vegas Bull Ring going forward. Pretty exciting stuff. Glad to see they'll be managing it going forward for 2026 and 2027 as well. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Day. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we're going to talk about the race here in just a little bit with a confrontation between Nick Sanchez and Jesse Love. But a story I feel like kind of went under the radar was an impressive run for Corey Day. Corey Day was able to pick up his first career top 5 finish in the NASCAR Xfinity Series by scoring a 4th place finish at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And had we had a much longer run, I really think Corey Day could have actually been a factor to pick up the win because his car in the long run was really, really good. We have seen a ton of improvement from Corey Day since the beginning of the year. There were a lot of people calling him a bust, a lot of people calling him washed. But I think this year he has shown a ton of growth and a ton of promise as a race car driver, and I've been impressed with the growth he's had so far this year. And I'm hoping that this can continue for 2026 as well. There's a lot of talk he could be full-time in the Xfinity Series next year, and I think that he'd be a really good candidate for a good team going forward. So I think he had a really impressive run. Congratulations to Corey on a great run and finishing in the top 5 at Las Vegas. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Bathurst 1000. Now, after the Xfinity Series race concluded, I believe, from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you had the Bathurst 1000 going on, which is one of the biggest races that takes place every year in the supercar world and one of the biggest races in the world. Now, I watched some of the Bathurst 1000, and I gotta say, it was absolutely wild and chaotic how big this race was. There's a lot of chaos going on. You had drivers going off. You had drivers crashing throughout the day, drivers who never crashed out of this event before, like Chaz Mostert crashing out for the first time, and it turned a little bit of controversy at the end of the event. But near the end, it would come down between a couple different drivers, but in the last second of the corner, because of a penalty, Garth Tander and Matt Payne in the Ford Mustang, they were able to come off the corner and pick up the win in the Bathurst 1000. Congratulations to Garth Tander and Matt Payne on picking up the win. I believe Shane Van Gisbergen has won the event before in the past a couple times, so it's big to see these guys go out there for Ford and pick up the win. It was a wild, chaotic event, but nonetheless, congratulations, Garth Tander and the Mustang team and Matt Payne on picking up the win and victory in the Bathurst 1000. A well-earned and well-deserved victory, especially after a wild and chaotic event that took place at this year's Bathurst 1000 in Australia. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Petit Le Mans. Now, while the Xfinity Series race was going on at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you also have Petit Le Mans going on in Road Atlanta, the season finale for the IMSA Series. And this race had a lot of things going on. You had a lot of fuel mileage happening and energy, which virtual energy is considered fuel in IMSA, and it was a wild, chaotic ending to the event. It looked like there was a potential possibility that Lamborghini will not be back in IMSA in 2026, at least in the top GTP class. There was a lot of talk, and not a lot of talk, but there was a lot of potential possibility that they were going to be able to come in and sneak out and pick up the win in Petit Le Mans. Well, unfortunately, they finished, I believe, in 3rd or 4th position, but they weren't able to get the win. The team that would win would be the Whelen Engineering number 31 Cadillac team. This is back-to-back wins for them for this year, closing out the year on a strong note. They, of course, don't win the championship. Porsche Penske ends up winning the title this year of how strong they've been. But congratulations to Cadillac on picking up the win, the Whelen Engineering team. They were extremely good. I think the BOP this year, from what I saw, was actually really good. They earned it, a well-deserved and well-earned victory. Congratulations to Cadillac Whelen team on picking up the win and picking up the victory in this year's edition of the Petit Le Mans. Congrats to them on picking up the win and getting it done this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Venturini Motorsports. Now, with Venturini Motorsports running their final race ever at the Las Vegas Bull Ring this year with Thomas Nuzzi had to drive the number 15 car, a chapter in history is officially closed. This is the fuzz, of course, like I mentioned, the final race for Venturini Motorsports and ARCA altogether. They are shutting down their program effective immediately, and they're selling their stuff off to Nitro Motorsports. Billy Venturini Jr. will, of course, be running the operation, will be helping Nitro Motorsports, being one of the higher-up managers, helping out the Nitro Motorsports team, and a lot of drivers currently driving for the team of course, Venturini will be likely going over to the Nitro Motorsports team. But you think about a lot of drivers who've driven for the program. People, of course, like Joey Logano, Jesse Love, Corey Heim, among many other drivers. Isabel Robusto, Haley Deegan drove for them at one point. Among many drivers who got the chance and opportunity to drive for the Venturini Motorsports team and organization. It is sad to see that this organization is going away effective immediately because there was a lot of success from the team and program, and you never want to see a team that's had a ton of success that is unfortunately shut shutting down. But it sucks to see them going away, sadly. It sucks that they're no longer around after a ton of success, but it was happening, unfortunately. We all knew it was likely going to be the end, and sadly, it sucks to see this happening. Disappointed to see Venturini's no longer around after a ton of success. We kind of knew this was coming. It's the end of a legendary road for the organization. Sad to see them go, but I hope down the road maybe they can come back. But as of now, I don't know if they're going to come back, which sucks, because I think Viking Motorsports is a great team. History, the best team in ARCA history. Sad to see them going away effective immediately. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Denny Hamlin once again. Now, a couple days ago, of course, the NASCAR Cup Series race concluded at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and Denny Hamlin picked up his 60th career NASCAR Cup Series win, becoming only 11th driver in NASCAR Cup history to score 60 wins, and is now tied for 10th on the all-time wins list with Kevin Harvick. Of course, will be inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame more than likely in the next couple of years. Think about what Denny Hamlin has accomplished in his career. He has been so competitive since the beginning of his career. He was right from the get-go in 2005 and 2006 when he began his NASCAR Cup career. He, right from the jump, was phenomenal. He almost won as a rookie the championship in 2006, finishing third in the points standings behind Matt Kenseth and Jimmy Johnson in the first of his 7 titles. And I think about what Denny Hamlin has accomplished. He is getting, it doesn't seem like Denny Hamlin's slowing down. I think there was a lot of unknowns because of Chris Gale going over to work as a crew chief for Denny Hamlin coming into this year. But Denny Hamlin has not missed a beat. He has been phenomenal this year, has done incredible. I think he's right now the favorite to win the championship with how strong he's been. 6 wins so far this year. This team has not missed a beat, and Denny Hamlin has a really good chance to get to 70 wins before his career is over with how strong he has been. Congrats to Denny on getting another win and picking up the win and getting his 60th career win. He did it. He finally gets his all-time goal, which is 60. He was emotional after picking up the win. Once again, like I said, congratulations, Denny, on picking up his 60th career NASCAR Cup Series win. He gets it done and earns a well-earned and well-deserved victory in the NASCAR Cup Series. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mason Maggio. As it was announced a couple days ago that Mason Maggio will drive the number 91 for DJM Racing this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway. This will be the first time I believe that Mason Maggio has competed with DJM Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and this is going to be the best opportunity that Mason Maggio has had in his NASCAR Xfinity career. While DJM Racing is not the fastest organization in the world, if you give a talented driver like Mason the chance and opportunity to drive for a good organization or a decent organization, I think he can go in there and do a really good job. He's been phenomenal with other organizations like Viking Motorsports, got a top 25 with them at one point last year, and I think, like I said, he's done a pretty good job over the years and has earned this right and opportunity. Also helps he does bring sponsorship funding to the table, which will help you get these chances and opportunities with solid or decent teams overall. I think Mason's got a shot maybe at a top 20 or top 15. We've seen DGM show some good stuff. Natalie Decker's led laps with this organization and team. So I do have confidence and faith that he'll do a solid job in general behind the wheel. I look for him to do a pretty solid job and opportunity. It's a great run for him. Hope he does well this weekend at Dega and get very chaotic at the track. So I hope Mason can do a good job. I have faith and confidence, though, that he'll show some good pace and strong speed, hopefully in this car this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway with DGM. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR 25. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier this evening that according to him, NASCAR 25 is currently ranked 4th on most played games on Xbox currently at the moment on the day this tweet came out, which is a couple days ago. Meanwhile, according to Adam Stern, it is currently listed as 10th on PlayStation at the moment. A lot of people have been already getting early copies of the game, and a lot of people have been starting to get NASCAR 25. Now, I have not been able to play the game at this point. I'm really hoping to play the game in the not-so-distant future. But from what I've seen so far, there's a lot of people that are very happy with this game. And to see that this game is ranked in the top 5 currently at the moment on Xbox, and in the top 10 on PlayStation on the same levels as like Battlefield 6, among other games as well, I think that's absolutely amazing and phenomenal to see. And for NASCAR 25, for a lot of people, they say this may be one of the best games that we've ever seen released by a game company in general. I had a lot of faith and confidence in iRacing that they could release a competent game, and I think they have done a solid job. Again, I think some of the things like promotion, they could have done a better job, and I think they're going to do a better job going forward in the future with other releases down the road. But I got to say, I love the look of it. I think from what a lot of people say, the driving physics of the game are really good. In general, I have faith and confidence going down the road with other releases that they release for first-year companies. A lot of these recent companies, a lot of the games first year releases have not been amazing over the years for NASCAR and other companies in general. So to see the fact that a lot of people really enjoy NASCAR 25, that's great to see. It's amazing to hear. And nonetheless, congratulations to an amazing release for NASCAR 25. And to see it in the top 5 in some of the rankings, I think that's phenomenal. And I think it's good to see NASCAR 25 have a good launch and release for a first year game. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jason White. As it was announced yesterday that Jason White will drive the number 22 for the Raymond Brothers Racing organization on Friday afternoon at Talladega Superspeedway. Jason White, this is not the American Jason White, this is the Canadian Jason White. He has made a couple starts, I believe, in the Craftsman Truck Series for the Raymond Brothers organization this year, and he's made a lot of starts over the years in ARCA and the Craftsman Truck Series as well. Obviously, he's driving for the Raymond Brothers, who we'll talk about just a little bit with Frankie Muniz. But Jason White, in my opinion, is not a terrible race car driver. He's just driving for a team that's had a lot of reliability problems and a lot of reliability issues so far this year. And they've had a lot of issues finishing races. They brought out a lot of yellows. They've caused a lot of controversy at the end of these events. And in general, I think Jason is probably going to do the best he can. He almost won the ARCA race a couple years ago at Daytona, so it's not like he's a bad race car driver. I just don't have the most confidence that he is going to have a chance and opportunity to go out there and be a factor and contender. But I hope he can prove me wrong and have a strong run with this team, because I'd like to see this team show some good pace and speed. It'd be really good for the sport. If they can do a good job, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he can't have a strong run with the program this weekend with the Raymond Brothers team. We'll see what he can do, and we'll see if he can show some good stuff out on the track this weekend at Talladega with a team that might give him a chance and opportunity. We'll see how he can do this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about McAnally-Hilgeman Racing. As it was announced on Friday early afternoon going into the evening that McAnally-Hilgeman Racing effectively will suspend their ARCA West program for the final race of the 2025 season at Phoenix Raceway, as they're going to be putting full focus on trying to finish up the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season, where Dale Hamburg and Tyler Ingram still have a chance and opportunity to win the title this year in 2025. They did, however, confirm that they will be back in 2026, but they will not announce their driver lineup for the event in 2026 at this point. This makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Obviously, McAnally-Hilgeman Racing does have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. There's rumored drivers who could be moving to other organizations. There's drivers who could be coming into the program next year. But obviously, like I mentioned, you got two drivers who have a chance and opportunity to win a title. Like I mentioned, Daniel Hemrick and Ankrum, I believe, are both above the cutoff line currently at the moment. And both have shown some really good speed in trucks. Both have gone to victory lane so far this year. And I think they've both done a pretty good job behind the wheel. So I think putting full focus on the truck program, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something that they're going to be really working towards, is trying to make sure that program can be up to speed for the remainder of this year so they can put themselves in the best position for the 2026 year. Again, like they said, though, they will be back in 2026, which is good to see. They're not going to be going away altogether, but I'm glad to see they will be back next year for sure. We'll just have to wait and see exactly who will get in the program next year, who will drive for the team, who brings the most funding and sponsorship, will likely play a role on who gets behind the wheel of the program next year. Nonetheless, really, really good to see they'll be back next year. It's a shame they won't be back for the remainder of this year, but makes a lot of sense. They'll be focusing fully on next year and towards next year so they can fully focus on trying to close out the year and end the year on a strong note in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and try to win a championship this year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rinus VeeKay. As it was officially announced and confirmed earlier today that Rinus VeeKay will be joining Juncos Hollinger Racing in IndyCar in 2026. They did not confirm what number that Rinus will have in the 2026 season, but according to what a lot of people have said, including I believe Marshall Pruitt and Nathan Brown, it's expected that Rinus VeeKay will be the lead and main driver for the program in 2026. While nothing was also confirmed today, many are expecting that Connor Daly more than likely will not return to the program in 2026, as I believe Stingray Robb does have a multi-year contract with the Juncos Hollinger team for next year. Now, say what you want to say about Connor Daly and Stingray Robb. Connor's definitely a much better driver than Stingray and will give you a better chance and opportunity to go to victory lane. But Stingray did have a couple decent runs last year. I think he's improved as a driver so far this year in IndyCar, did show some decent runs this season. As for Rinus VeeKay, talking about him, I think this is a really good decision for Rinus. I think Rinus is a really talented guy, and we've seen what he can do with smaller teams like Dale Coyne Racing, for example. He took that Dale Coyne Racing car that has struggled in recent years, and he took that car, got, I believe, a couple podiums last year, and was competing for top 10 in points with the Dale Coyne Racing team. I think Renus actually ends up doing better. Plus, he'll be able to get a really strong oval program. And we know how good Renus is, especially at Indianapolis. He's qualified very well with Ed Carpenter Racing in the past in the Indy 500, and I think it will lead to Renus doing a really strong job with the team. I think he actually will have some really good oval runs, and I think that he'll actually get this team up to, in some way, shape, or form, up to the front on the road course tracks, because that's been a little bit of struggle with the team and the program, as they've not been able to be the fastest team on the road courses, and I think Renus will be able to accomplish that and get them where they need to be as a road course team and organization. So I'm excited to see what he can do next year with the Juncos Hollinger Racing team, but like I said, I would expect him to do a solid job with the program, and I think he'll be the best driver they've ever had. I think they're going to show some solid pace and speed. I think they'll do pretty good for the expectations of the program. Excited to see what he can do. Looking forward to see what he can do on the racetrack in 2026 with Juncos Hollinger Racing. Looking forward to seeing him get this chance and opportunity with this program. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Williams. As it was announced yesterday that Josh Williams will drive the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing this weekend at Talladega Super Speedway. I believe this will be like the third or fourth schedule start that Josh has had with the Alpha Prime Racing team this year. Of course, he's driven the number 45 in a couple other events this year, and has also driven the number 91 to try to close out the remainder of the year. Obviously, Josh Williams earlier in the year lost his ride with College Racing due to the unfortunate struggles with this program. He just wasn't having a really strong run with the team, and because of that, they kind of went their separate ways, and he, of course, won't be back with the team in 2026. We're still kind of waiting on what the college truck program is going to look like and what the Xfinity program will look like for 2026. Now, as for Josh going into next year, I would think Josh Williams more than likely will end up being with either Alpha Prime or DGM next year. Going back to one of those programs, they're going to be looking for someone who could bring sponsorship funding, and Josh Williams does have the funding and sponsorship that's going to be needed to go to a team like this. But I'm glad to see that he'll be back with Alpha Prime. I think he is a solid super speedway racer, and I think he's a solid driver who just was in a really bad position with College, as that team has definitely taken a step backwards. But I'm glad to see him back in the Xfinity Series once again. I really hope he can do a really good job this weekend. It'd be nice for him to show some good stuff with the Alpha Prime Racing team. We'll see how things go this weekend. We'll see if Josh can show some really good pace and really strong speed, and we'll see if that 45 car can be up front. Glad to see him back in the series once again, and I hope he can do a really good job with the Alpha Prime Racing team this weekend at Talladega. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 2026 rules package. Now, while the 2026 NASCAR rules package has not been announced at this moment, Bob Pockrass indicated, I believe going into Saturday early morning, he indicated that the 2026 NASCAR's rules package is expected to be announced around November 14th, so in about a month from now, it's expected to be announced. Now, the big news here is that the new Chevy body is expected to be announced for 2026. Chevrolet, of course, has confirmed in recent weeks, I should say, and I believe that one of the higher-ups in NASCAR confirmed recently, too. I believe it was Elton Sawyer who did confirm the Chevrolet has sent their body, and they have had it approved. They just haven't announced exactly what that Chevy body is going to be. Obviously, the reason we're getting a new Chevrolet body next year is because of the fact that the Camaro has been gone at least for quite some time at this point, and Chevrolet's been needing a new body. Of course, Toyota got a new body in 2024, and Ford got a new body with their Mustang in 2024 as well. So Chevrolet's been needing a new one. There's been rumors that it potentially could be like something called the Chevy Tracker, I'm pretty sure. I think in supercars they use something called the Chevy Tracker, which is somewhat similar to the Camaro, which would certainly be interesting. They could use that. There was talk about maybe Cadillac coming in. Bob Pockrass did confirm that Cadillac is not expected to be coming to NASCAR in 2026. They are not going to be a new manufacturer coming in. They would, if they were to come in, they would be a replacement for the Chevrolet brand. But at the same time, Cadillac, from what I understand, will not be in the series next year. Yes, of course, they do make sedans, and they could run a Cadillac, but as of now, like I mentioned, they're not expected to be in the series next year. But as of now, like I said, we should be expecting a new Chevrolet body to be coming in, which I think is exciting because I think Chevrolet needs a new body that can be competitive. There's supposed to be a test that's supposed to take place with some new ECUs. That test obviously did not end up happening, which I think affected this kind of happening, unfortunately, with the new body. Nonetheless, I'm glad to see we will be getting a new body in 2026. I think it's important for Chevrolet to have that new body come in, and we'll see if that new body can produce some good racing and show some good stuff out on the track. Good to see that we'll finally be getting a new Chevrolet body. I think, again, it will be the Tracker, not the Camaro next year. We'll have to wait and see exactly what that new body will be. It's very, very soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about horsepower. Now, we talked about this on the channel last week, but it was announced earlier this week, or last week I should say, on Wednesday, about a week ago, that there will be an increase of 4 horsepower on the short tracks or tracks that are shorter than 1.5 miles that are ovals, and all the road courses will be going from 670 horsepower to 750 horsepower in 2026. And there have been some drivers that have reacted to the increase in horsepower on the shorter ovals and the road courses next year. The most blunt of those, of course, was Kyle Larson. He spoke on the increase and said that it's definitely going to be a step in the right direction. However, he does want to make it clear that the media should not spin this and jump and say, oh, this is going to effectively fix everything. There are still problems that do need to be fixed with this next-gen car, and it's not going to be something that's going to make the racing product a million times better. It might make it slightly better, but it's not going to make it a million times % better. I agree with Kyle Larson on this, and as much as Kyle Larson, sometimes many people say that he can be negative, I think he does have a really good point here. Kyle Larson has been very blunt about things, and again, while sometimes I don't agree with everything that Kyle Larson says, I do appreciate the candidness that Kyle Larson carries with himself, because to me, I think he does have a really, really good point here. We have seen the racing product with the short ovals and the road courses not be as strong. But even Josh Berry brought this up when he was speaking to media and said, you may not need to have a million horsepower if the tire can be good. Because not just the horsepower, that's going to make the racing better. The wider tires have brought a lot more grip to the track. It makes it more difficult to pass. When you have a wider tire, you get more grip on the track. We also have the diffuser on the bottom of the car. Look at the Xfinity Series, for example. We saw a phenomenal and great race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Xfinity race. We go to the Cup race, and while it wasn't an awful race by any stretch of the imagination, it certainly wasn't a great race out on the track, and it definitely could have been a lot better. I think we have to look at it, that horsepower, I think, as Tyler Reddick brought up, I believe 2 years ago, I'm pretty sure, he said that you would probably need over 1,000 horsepower for the racing to be truly affected by an increase of that. And I just don't know if we're ever going to get to 1,000 horsepower unless they bring some sort of hybrid component into this car. To me, I think Kyle Larson, again, has a very good point here, and I think what Larson said is really true in some way, shape, or form. I think it will be better. I don't think there's any question on that. But again, I don't think it's going to be a million % better. I think there's still a lot that does need to be done with this next-gen car to make the racing, like I said, a million times better. I really hope it can be better. I think the better racing we can have, the better it can be. Hopefully it does get better. But again, I think Larson does bring up a really strong, good point here that the racing is not going to be a million % better with an increase of horsepower. Hopefully I'm wrong and can be a lot better. But like I said, I don't think it's going to be a million % better with an increase in horsepower going into next year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Nick Sanchez and Jesse Love. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you saw a little bit of controversy that happened at the end of the event between Nick Sanchez and Jesse Love. So those two were battling for, I believe, up inside the top 5 in the event. And Jesse Love did have a really good car all day, but his car was really tough to get going, especially on shorter runs. While Nick Sanchez, who actually had a speeding penalty earlier in the event, was recovering throughout the night and was charging his way up to the front. It seemed like that 48 car was coming on strong and would have had a chance and opportunity to go to victory lane. Both had a little bit of contact that happened on the racetrack, battling for a position inside the top 5, and they both dropped back positions. Nick Sanchez would finish in 5th, while Jesse Love would finish in 6th. After the race concluded, Jesse Love was very furious at Nick Sanchez and confronted him after the race. I don't have the full transcript here, but judging by what Jesse Love said, you could tell he was very pissed off at Nick Sanchez. But once he got pulled away by the media to talk about what exactly happened, Jesse Love basically explained that this is not the first time that me and Nick have gotten into it. There was an incident between those guys at Portland. We all remember when Nick Sanchez pretty much plotted to everybody else, and Connor Zilisch had to go through the S's there and basically did the penalty correctly the way he's supposed to do it. That caused a lot of controversy. Nick Sanchez was the one that caused the chaos at the end. And then, of course, Justin Allgaier actually backed up Jesse Love a little bit by saying that Nick Sanchez has earned this reputation where he's basically been a little bit way too aggressive and has caused a lot of incidents on the track. I'm going to say this about the Nick Sanchez and Jesse Love situation. I think Jesse Love is more frustrated at the fact that he lost a chance and opportunity to go to victory lane. Has Nick Sanchez at times been a little over-aggressive and done some things? Yes. But I think his response is funny, saying if you don't like hard racing, cry about it. But I also think the hard racing side of things, I think Nick Sanchez has a point that Jesse Love can't be upset and mad about racing hard. But I think Jesse Love is not as frustrated with Nick Sanchez as he is frustrated with the fact that he lost a chance and opportunity to go for the victory. Because Jesse Love, had we had a long green flag run, I think he beats Connor Zolch at the end, and he's probably up there going up against Eric Almirola and Connor Zolch for the victory. Instead, Jesse Love gets relegated to finishing in 5th and 6th, and while Jesse Love's in a good position in the points, being 20 points up currently at the moment, I think he would have loved to be locked in even if with Dega on the line. And with Martinsville, which can be very, very chaotic. So I think that's more the reason why Jesse Love was upset about the situation there. And I think he has a right to be upset and frustrated at kind of getting raced. Maybe I don't think he has a full reason to be upset and frustrated with hard racing, but at the same time, I'd be frustrated too if I lost a chance and opportunity to go out there and pick up and go out there and get a victory. Because that's my goal, is to go out there and compete for wins. And if I can't go out there and compete for wins, I'm probably going to be a little bit agitated and a little upset with me losing that chance and opportunity to go get the win. So I get the frustration, but at the same time, you probably shouldn't cry about it too much and should probably focus on trying to win Dega at this point. But I get the frustration because he did lose a chance and opportunity to go to victory lane. Can't entirely blame him for being a little upset about losing the chance and opportunity to go for the win at that point. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon and William Byron. Now, if you watch a NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you probably saw the incident between Ty Dillon and William Byron coming to pit road. Now, these were not the only two that would have issues on pit road throughout the day. We'll talk about some of those incidents here in just a second. But with about 35 laps to go in the event, Kyle Larson got by William Byron for the race lead. But Ty Dillon, who had basically was coming down pit road, who never really gave an indication he was coming down pit road, would go up the racetrack, wash up the track, then come back down, and William Byron had nowhere to go and would just straight run into the back of Ty Dillon, and there'd be a massive crash that happened, and now William Byron, instead of having a chance maybe to compete for a championship, he might lose his chance and opportunity to compete for a title. Now, obviously, a lot of people were very upset with Ty Dillon in this situation because Ty Dillon basically then went on the radio and basically said, we gave him opportunity for our spotter to talk to Brandon Lyons about exactly what he was doing coming to pit road. He then continued on by saying, I probably shouldn't have to indicate with my hand that I'm coming to pit road. Which, I gotta say this, even if you've had spotter conversations, you probably should indicate to the driver behind you that you are coming to pit road. Because if you indicate and put your hand out the window that you are coming to pit road, that might have been avoided. Instead, you didn't put your hand out pit road. And again, all the responsibility goes to the driver coming down pit road. It is not on William Byron. And this, again, is a big problem I do have with the playoff format, is stuff like this can really affect the outcome of things. But I think Ty Dillon is 1,000% more at fault for the incident on track there than William Byron is, because William Byron really had nowhere to go. But this is not the only incident that happened on the racetrack where we nearly had an incident on pit road. Shane Van Gisbergen and Michael McDowell nearly had a worse crash. Michael McDowell never indicated he was coming down pit road, would go way up the racetrack. He was coming down pit road, washes way up the track, and Shane Van Gisbergen and Eric Jones nearly run into the back of him, and we nearly have another massive crash. And you could tell the Shane Van Gisbergen team were not happy about it. Now, people thought initially that it was SVG saying, come on. It wasn't Shane Van Gisbergen saying that. I think it was another spotter, probably the 43 spotter is my guess, who was probably saying, come on the radio. I think that a lot of drivers just seem to forget this week how to enter pit road. Again, from what I understand, there was no indication from Michael McDowell, and that's definitely infuriating, I think, for a team when they see that. I would be infuriated, too, if I was in SVG's position there, too, because, to me, that's pretty egregious. I think that Michael McDowell SVG incident would have been way more egregious if SVG would have run the back of Michael McDowell, because McDowell should know a lot better, especially for someone who's been in the Cup Series now for nearly 20 years at this point. I think McDowell would know better, but it seemed like in that case and situation that Michael McDowell probably didn't know better about the pit road stuff. Again, I understand that Las Vegas is a very treacherous pit road, and it's been one of the more difficult pit roads over the years, but at the same time, I think you should know better, and you should probably indicate, like I said, when you are coming to pit road. That could have been avoided. We nearly had more catastrophe than we did. Luckily, everyone was okay, but it's a shame that a driver's chance to potentially win a championship might be going out the window because someone couldn't indicate they were coming to pit road, and I think that's really frustrating in my opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story in today's episode as we're talking about Frankie Muniz. As it was announced a couple days ago that Frankie Muniz has been officially cleared to return to NASCAR effective immediately. He'll be returning this weekend to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Talladega Superspeedway. He will also run the final 3 Truck Series race of the year, including next weekend at Martinsville and the season finale at Phoenix as well. Frankie Muniz has been out for the last couple months due to unfortunate injury while he was on his ladder. He was working on something in his house, I'm pretty sure, and suffered a wrist injury that has sidelined him for the last couple of months. He had to wait for doctors and medical care for him to return, and now he'll be back behind the wheel. It has been a very tumultuous season for Frankie Muniz so far in 2025. He has scored only 1 top 10 so far this year, and I believe only 2 or 3 top 15s throughout the whole entire season. Now, is Frankie Muniz the best driver out there? No. But Frankie Muniz is someone who is a young driver, not young, but he's someone that doesn't have a ton of experience in stock cars, only racing for the last couple of years. And he's with an organization that has really struggled so far in 2025 to have the pace and speed to be a factor and strong contender. There's been a lot of reliability issues for Frankie, and there's been a lot of struggles for this team and organization. It's no secret that the Raymond brothers are one of the slower teams out on the racetrack on a week-by-week basis. So it's unfortunately not a shock and surprise to see that there have been some struggles for Frankie this year for him to perform. Obviously, it's unknown at this point whether Frankie Muniz will be back with this team in 2026. There's a chance he could be back. There's also a chance that he could leave the team in 2026, and he could retire. Who knows at this point. But for Frankie, I really am glad to see him back behind the wheel this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway. I'll admit I'm a little surprised, especially with a track like Talladega, where you could have another injury come into play. I am shocked to see that he's returning this weekend. It would have made a lot more sense for him to sit out one more week and then get back behind the wheel the week after that at Martinsville, because while Martinsville can be a track where you can have injuries, you're not as substantial to injuries like you are at a track like Talladega, for example. So I think it would have been a little smarter to keep Frankie out for one more week and put someone else behind the wheel, like a Mason Maggio behind the wheel for that weekend. But I guess it makes sense considering he does have experience racing at Dega. He did almost get a top 10 with Rhett Jones Racing last year in the ARCA event here, so it makes some sense to put him behind the wheel. I hope he can have a good run and glad to see him back behind the wheel. I just don't expect him to be a factor in any way, shape, or form. It'll probably be a struggle for him. We'll see how Frankie do, and we'll see if he can have a strong run with the team and program known as Rayum this weekend at Dega. We'll see how things go out on the racetrack this weekend at this event. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about an update on the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports lawsuit. As was reported by Adam Stern and Bob Pockers, I believe on Friday, that 2311 and Front Row have filed an update to the lawsuit over the last couple days. They filed what NASCAR bizarrely called a massive increase of payments to the teams will barely keep up with inflation over the life of the 2020-25 charter agreement. Obviously, there's not much chance really change over the last couple weeks. Obviously, we know there's been a lot of talk recently about a potential settlement that could be coming into play against NASCAR and 2011 and Front Row. NASCAR stated recently they do want to settle all together with this lawsuit, and NASCAR has, of course, been granted some things that they've wanted with their side of things with that settlement. We do know there's a settlement case expected to take place on October 21st. There's a settlement hearing that is going to happen next week, about a week from now, and there could be a potential decision on that coming very, very soon. Obviously, 2011 and Front Row would probably like to continue this lawsuit going forward so they can try to put a lot of dirt on NASCAR. Obviously, with this update on the charter agreement, that was signed, what has been stated by Jeffrey Kessler multiple times is about the payouts, where the teams were going to get paid out right from the beginning, and then those payouts were going to be dropped significantly over time. Let's say they're getting $9 to $10 million across the board. That was going to drop over time, and that revenue was going to decrease over time. According to what Jeffrey Kessler said, they have front-loaded that agreement. They front-loaded the money, and it's going to be less over time. They're trying to change that. The big question will be what could come from the settlement at this point. I think that's going to be the big thing to watch throughout the remainder of this, because obviously I think a lot of people in the industry would like a settlement to come into play between NASCAR 2011 and Front Row. As much as it's been sometimes fun to listen to this suit, it's dragged out over time. But if a settlement doesn't happen this upcoming week on October 21st, there's a very good chance and strong possibility that we could be going to a trial on December 1st. That trial could take a long time to go go through. And I think a lot of people at this particular moment and point would, instead of having the trial happen on December 1st, they're really, really hoping that a settlement can be reached so we can move on to the next thing and get the sport in a better position. Because right now, I think that'd be the best thing to happen for the sport, is a settlement to come into effect. Will we get a settlement? Who knows at this particular point, but we're waiting for a potential thing to happen like that. And I think that's going to be the big story to watch as time progresses and goes on, is if a settlement will take place, because we have effect on charter stories, among other things, they kind of pay attention to. We'll see what happens. Nonetheless, so we'll have to wait and see if a settlement does come into play, and we'll see if that happens. But we did get an update on the lawsuit, and we'll wait to see what happens next week. If a settlement isn't reached, we go to trial on December 1st, and that trial will probably take place through the remainder of December as well. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brendan Butterbean Queen. As it was announced on Monday that Brendan Queen will drive the number 11 car for Kaulig Racing for the final 3 NASCAR Xfinity Series races of 2025. He'll drive it this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway, then he'll race it at Martinsville, and then he'll finally race it at Phoenix Raceway. Brendan Butterbean Queen has made 2 or 3 starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series so far this year. He drove at Bristol Motor Speedway about a little over a month ago, had a decent run in that event, scoring a top 20. But then he ran at Kansas Speedway after having a phenomenal run, winning the ARCA race at Kansas. He got into the number 11 car, qualified up front, I believe, inside the top 10, led some laps in the race, and finished inside the top 10. And now he's going to get the chance and opportunity to drive the final 3 races for the team and organization this year. There's obviously been continuing to be a ton of rumors and speculation over the course of the last couple of weeks that Brendan Butterbean Queen is likely one of the early favorites to drive the Kaulig truck next year. We're still waiting on official announcement on that Kaulig truck program for 2026, but his name continues to be the highest linked candidate for that seat at the moment. And the fact that he's been getting a ton of starts at Kaulig Racing this year tells you everything we need to know, because again, we do expect he'll be one of the drivers for the program for next year. But I'm excited for Brendan at this point too, because Brendan, in my opinion, has earned this ride and opportunity. I think Brendan Butterbean Queen is an extremely talented driver. He gets the best out of equipment every time, and I think he always does a phenomenal and really, really good job behind the wheel. And I think that Brendan is going to do a really good job of Kaulig. Obviously, like I mentioned before, Kaulig Racing is definitely taking a little bit of a step backwards when it comes to their performance. And I think him having a good run this weekend would be really good for his stock going forward, because of course he won the ARCA championship this year, won 6 or 7 races in ARCA, put up a dominant clinic, and just did a great job this year. I think he'll do really, really good with the Kaulig Racing team, the final 3 events. I'm circling that Martinsville race, for example. That Martinsville race, I would think he'll be one of the favorites to win. He's a great short track racer. He drove, of course, that truck race in North Wilkesboro last year with Tricon, did a really good job scoring the top 5. And while I don't think Kaulig's as strong as Tricon Garage's truck team at that point, I certainly do believe that Brendan can get behind the wheel and do a really good job. So I'm expecting Brendan to do a really good job in those final 3 races. And again, it's really good and awesome to see that he is back behind the wheel. Again, we are expecting he'll be one of the favorites to go to the Kaulig truck program next year. And I think this is going to be an amazing and great opportunity for him. So excited to see what he can do in the final 3 races with Kaulig. We're still waiting on things to be confirmed. We'll wait for that to be officially announced here in the not so distant future. But like I said, exciting news for sure. And glad to see that Brendan will get the chance and will get the opportunity to join the Kaulig Racing team for the final 3 races of the year. Glad to see he'll be driving for them for a few more races in the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity Series season as he closes out the year, and we close out the year with him driving for the team this year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Aric Almirola. As it was confirmed after Aric Almirola won the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway that Aric will be driving the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing for the final 3 NASCAR Xfinity Series races of 2025. He'll drive the 19 this weekend at Talladega, then he'll drive next weekend at Martinsville, and then he'll drive the season finale at Phoenix Raceway. Originally, it was planned for Justin Bonsignor to drive the number 19 car, I believe, at Martinsville next weekend, and also the season finale at Phoenix as well. The reason why the schedule has changed up for Aric Almirola to get behind the wheel is because Aric Almirola is competing for the Owners' Championship. With him winning the Xfinity Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, his team and the number 19 team have the chance and opportunity to win the Owners' title. And it does make a lot of sense. Aric has had a really good year in the Xfinity Series so far this year, with 3 victories coming into this weekend. Of course, picking up a win earlier in the year at Phoenix Raceway. Then, of course, winning a couple other events, including this past weekend at Las Vegas, and showing really strong on pace and really good speed like at Bristol as well. It makes a ton of sense for him to get behind the wheel. I did see some people that got really upset about him running this event, and I kind of got to disagree with the people getting upset about this. Yes, I get Eric Almirola is a former NASCAR Cup Series driver, but it's not like Eric Almirola is full-time in this series and is taking up a spot. Eric is there to go out there and pick up a win. He does have sponsorship and funding for crying out loud, and I think he's earned the right and opportunity, especially after getting 3 wins and being the only guy who's really been good with Joe Gibbs Racing this year outside of Brandon Jones, who's had a pretty good year in the number 20 car. He's been the only guy that's won more than 2 races this year for the team and organization. Chris Bell can't say that this year, and there's other drivers who can't say that. And we know Eric is really good at these 3 tracks. He's won an Xfinity Series race at Talladega Superspeedway before, back in 2017. He won Martinsville. In fact, swept both Martinsville races last year. And at Phoenix, he's a defending winner of Phoenix from earlier in the year. He could win the final 3 races of the year and could end the season with 6 wins and jump up to 13 career Xfinity Series wins, which is a pretty respectful career, especially for the secondary series. And it would be pretty cool down the road if he got the chance to be full-time with the team. Obviously, Eric Almirola, I think has stated publicly before, though, he doesn't want to run full-time in a series because he has a lot of things he wants to focus on. He has a family. That's a big reason why he isn't full-time currently at the moment in the first place. But I think for Eric Almirola, it makes sense for him to run. Again, it makes a ton of sense for him to run the final 3 races this year, and I would expect Eric Almirola to probably do a really solid, a really good job in these events, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does get at least one of these 3 events. I'm circling that Martinsville race because he's been so good at Martinsville over the years, even back when he ran in Cup for Stewart-Haas Racing at the end of their tenure. He was really good with them, and I think he's got a good chance to go to victory lane in one of these 3 events. Obviously, we don't know what the plans are yet for 2026. We've heard rumors he could come back next year. We've also heard rumors he could retire at the end of the year. There is a potential possibility on that front. But nonetheless, for Eric Almirola, this is a really strong opportunity to continue driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. Again, I think he's going to do a really good job in the final events with the team. I think he's got a good chance and opportunity to go out there and get it done. We'll see what can happen with him. Nonetheless, glad to see him back with the team once again, and glad to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to try to defend that title, the owner's title, and get the 19 in victory lane. It would suck if he did take the championship, owner's championship from Connor Zolch, who's been dominant this year. I think that's why people are upset that he beat Connor, but he straight up beat him fair and square, and it was a good battle and a good title battle for that. He'll have the chance now to try to win the owner's title at Phoenix, and will try to win the final 3 races of the NASCAR Xfinity Series season in the year 2025, and we'll see if he does make a comeback and return in 2026 as well. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto. As it was announced on Monday morning that Matt DiBenedetto is out of Viking Motorsports effective immediately and will not return to Viking Motorsports for the remainder of the 2025 season. It was announced that Connor Mosack will drive the number 99 for the final 3 races of the 2025 season, with him expected to bring some sponsorship funding to drive the number 99 car for the remainder of the year. General Manager of the program, Jeremy Lang, did release a statement by saying, "We thank Matt DiBenedetto for the contributions in 2024-2025. He brought a lot to our team. He brought a lot of a foundation for the program, and we thank him for his services with the team and program." This is definitely a big surprise to me, because while Matt DiBenedetto, we didn't know exactly how long the contract was for Matt DiBenedetto to be with Viking Motorsports. From what I had saw, Matt DiBenedetto originally had a multi-year contract with the Viking Motorsports team and organization to be with the program, and was supposed to be back with the team in 2026. But if you've noticed on the car so far this year, and pretty much almost every single race this year, there has been no funding on the number 99 car. Viking themselves and Don Sackett have been really funding the car out of pocket this year, and Matt has not been bringing a ton of sponsorship and funding to the table with the program. But at the same time, this is another situation for Matt DiBenedetto. He's been jumping from team to team, seems like every other year. Now, in this case and situation, I really don't understand this move, because here's the issue I have with this. If the plan was for Matt DiBenedetto to not return to the program in 2026, I think that's understandable, but I feel like in this situation, he should be able to finish the year. I don't understand why this is now the second time where he's been kicked out of the team and program with only a few races to go. I mean, this is now the second time we've come to Talladega Superspeedway and Matt DiBenedetto is no longer with the team and organization. I feel for Matt in this situation, because unlike other situations where Matt DiBenedetto kind of put himself in a really bad position, we all go back to what happened a couple years ago with the Wood brothers in 2021, where he thought he'd be back back with the Wood Brothers in 2022, tried to blame Roger Penske, call Roger Penske out, and then Roger basically had to come out in defense and basically say, no, Matt, you were promised a contract for 2021. You had to, as a prove yourself your deal for you to come back in 21, and then 2022, we were going to part ways no matter what. Then with the Rackley situation, he announced he'd be leaving the team. From what I remember correctly, he was supposed to go to Collin Racing initially for the 2024 season in Cup. That deal fell through for Matt to continue going there, and he lost his ride with Rackley with 3 races to go. Despite the fact he won with the team the year prior at Talladega Superspeedway, he was let go at that particular point. And now in this situation, well, yes, Matt DiBenedetto has not had a phenomenal season with the Viking Motorsports team and organization this year. I feel like for Matt DiBenedetto, I think even if you were planning to not let him continue being with the program, it doesn't make sense because, number one, Matt DiBenedetto has been really good with Viking Motorsports at super speedways. He got a top 5 finish with this team at Talladega in the spring. And we know Matt DiBenedetto is going to give the team the best chance and opportunity to go out there and compete for a victory at a super speedway like that. Again, I understand this season has not been great for the organization. We have to remember this is a first-year team and organization in their first full season, especially ECR equipment. If people were expecting that Matt DiBenedetto was going to take a team that just started last year and was going to take that team up to the next level, I think a lot of people are really crazy in that situation. As for his replacement for the final 3 races, a big reason why Connor Mosack is in that car is funding. If we're basing it off of talent, he wouldn't be behind the wheel of that car. This is no disrespect to Connor Mosack. But does anybody realistically think that Connor Mosack in the final 3 races is going to do much and get that car up front? I don't think so. I don't think Connor Mosack is going to do much in that car. I think it's going to be really a struggle for Connor Mosack to be a factor, and I think he's likely going to finish outside the top 25 and top 30. He's not that great of a super speedway racer, if we're going to be honest. He isn't the best short track racer in the field. He's caused a lot of carnage and incidents over the last couple years at those types of tracks. And Phoenix, while yes, it can race like a road course from time to time, so I'll give him his flowers on the road courses because he did a pretty good job at the Charlotte Roval. I don't think that he is going to set the world on fire in that car. So what does this mean for Matt DiBenedetto going forward? Well, Matt DiBenedetto, I'm not sure what this means because I hope he does able to find a ride, but I don't see a top-level team taking a chance on him unless he goes part-time with the team. I mean, Joe Gibbs Racing hasn't announced anything at this point, but do you want to deal with Matt DiBenedetto with some of the stuff that happens behind the scenes? I'm not sure at this point. Does he go part-time with the team like Rick Racing and Cup? Rick Racing has not announced their full official plans for next year, even though we do expect Cody Ware to be full-time in the 51, but does he go part-time in the 15? That is a possibility, but we don't know if Corey LaJoie's back with the team yet or not. Could he go to a team like JRM and drive part-time? Probably not, because they're going to be looking for someone who brings sponsorship and funding. That's going to be the issue for Matt DiBenedetto, is going to be the funding side of things. I just think this time around, there wasn't really a lot of drama. I think a lot of people do expect a lot of times when it comes to Matt DiBenedetto, because to be fair, there has been a lot of drama around Matt DiBenedetto when it comes to him and stuff that happens behind the scenes. I don't think this time around there really was any drama. I think it all came down to the almighty dollar, especially with the economy there is right now. You are going to need funding and sponsorship if you're going to get a good opportunity. And the problem is, like I said, for Matt DiBenedetto, he doesn't bring a ton of sponsorship and he doesn't bring a massive amount of following. And that's a big issue for a team. A lot of these teams, like I mentioned before, they want you to bring a massive paycheck. That's why you get a lot of paid drivers that show up. It's one of the reasons why you don't see Kyle Weatherman racing currently at the moment right now, because Kyle Weatherman doesn't bring sponsorship and funding to the table. That's why other drivers who are really talented, like a Brett Moffitt, for example, are not racing in NASCAR at the moment because Brett Moffitt doesn't have a ton of funding. Plus, from what I know, he's not the easiest guy to work with at this moment. So for Matt DiBenedetto, like I said, it is disappointing to see that he won't be back with this team. As for who I think will drive for there, I think you got to look at Connor Mosack being the favorite to consider they're putting him in for the final 3 races and the fact he brings sponsorship and funding. I would think Connor Mosack most likely is going to drive the car unless you get Harrison Burton, but Harrison Burton is linked to Sam Hunt Racing right now. So I would think at this moment Connor Mosack is probably going to be with Viking Motorsports next year. I hate it for Matt DiBenedetto, but I'm not shocked and surprised with everything we've heard. It's disappointing to see him not back with Viking, but at the same token, at the same time, it's not the craziest story we've heard that he won't be back with Viking, considering he doesn't, like I said, bring a massive amount of funding and a massive amount of sponsorship. And you need a lot of funding and sponsorship if you're going to be with a team and organization in this sport. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Justin Haley. We did a video talk about the story on the channel earlier today, but it was announced that Justin Haley will not be returning to Spire Motorsports in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season and will not drive the number 7 car next year. This, of course, has been rumored and speculated over the course of the last couple of months. There's been a lot of talk and chatter over the last couple of months that Justin Haley would likely not be returned to Spire Motorsports in the 2026 season. They're really hoping for that. The performance for Justin Haley was really going to improve quite a bit throughout the year, and while he did have some good runs like Daytona and a couple of the races throughout the year, there wasn't that massive uptick in performance. Now, I am going to defend Justin Haley a little bit. We'll talk about his likely replacement here in just a short little bit. But Justin Haley, yes. Has he been as good as Carson Osbar and Michael McDowell this year? No. McDowell and Carson Osbar have had more flashes of brilliance this year, and currently McDowell and Osbar are both in the top 25 in the standings, while Justin Haley, to be fair, is 31st in the regular season standings. But I don't feel like Justin Haley in this situation was really given a fair shot. Early in the year, he was going to be working with Rodney Childers, who was his crew chief for the first 7-8 race of the year. He had Cheddar Smith as his car chief, who worked with Kevin Harvick for many years, and he had the pit crew of the number 7 originally. Early in the year, not even a quarter way through the year, it was announced that Rodney Childers was let go from Spire Motorsports effective immediately early in the year after a strong run at Bristol Motor Speedway. We get to Darlington. Guess what? Cheddar Smith, the car chief, is let go, and he goes over to Joe Gibbs Racing to be the car chief for Ty Gibbs, and we see an uptick in performance for Ty Gibbs. And then meanwhile, the pit crew that he had gets swapped out and moved over to Kyle Larson, and Kyle Larson's original pit crew, who he had for 4 or 5 years, gets moved over to work with Justin Haley. So in my opinion, Justin Haley did not get the most fair shot, and I feel like that 7 car is really cursed. Some will mention about Corey LaJoie going back to the C, but I would not expect Corey LaJoie to go over to this program. And regardless of who does get behind the wheel of this number 7 car next year, I don't think they're going to do a much better job than Justin Haley has done, unless things get changed really quickly. We've heard rumors of Ryan Sparks maybe not being the crew chief next year of that car, but I just don't understand why when Ryan Childers got let go, I think the most logical thing they should have done is put Matt McCall behind as the crew chief. I just don't understand why Matt McCall was not promoted to be the crew chief instead of continuing being the director of performance, where I think Matt McCall would have been a much better crew chief than Ryan Sparks, so I think there would have been an uptick in performance. Now, where does Justin Haley go in 2026? Obviously, there are going to be some options for next year. There's a lot of talk from some people, including Bob Pockerson, knows that he could end up at the Kaulig Truck Team next year. The Kaulig Truck Team has still not announced their plans for next year, and I think that he would be a prime candidate for the Kaulig Truck Team in 2026. I think he'd be a solid option for that team, and I think he'd be a really good foundation driver, and he's a solid driver. I mean, he won a lot of races in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2018, picked up 3 or 4 wins that year, and made the championship 4. He could also go to Kaulig's Xfinity program. We still don't know exactly what the lineup is going to be for the Kaulig Xfinity program. We've heard rumors of Christian Eckes going over there next year, once again being back with Kaulig next year. But there's still nothing official at this point that he will be back with the program in 2026. So we're still waiting on that at this particular moment in point. We could see 2 full-time cars of Eckes and Haley, and I think Justin Haley, who did make a start with the Kaulig team this year and nearly won at Daytona, it would make a lot of sense for him to go over there. But I really hope for Justin Haley, he's given an opportunity. I think Justin Haley is a talented guy. There were rumors he had a Hendrick development deal. There were rumors, I guess, he drove for Rick Ware and got multiple top 10s. But since taking over the 7 car, it's been a little tumultuous. Now, the other big question a lot of people are going to ask, who's taking over the 7 car? There's been a lot of drivers who've been linked over the number 7 car. There are people talking about Corey Heim initially. That deal fell through quickly because Corey is still going to be part-time. He's not expected to have a full-time deal in 2026 with any team in any organization. He's expected to be part-time with teams like 2311, Tricon Garage, and of course in the Truck Series, Xfinity Series with Sam Hunt Racing. Then people will bring up Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And while Stenhouse, I think, would be an upgrade over Justin Haley, Ricky has never been given a great opportunity. I think we're waiting until 2027 because Ricky did confirm not too long ago that he does have a multi-year contract with Hayek. Now, they could buy out the contract, and Hayek is having some funding issues or potential funding issues, so Ricky does bring funding to the program. I could see him going over the number 7 in the future, but as of now, I expect Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to stay with the Hayek team for the 2026 year. Then people are going to bring up Kyle Busch. And I get Kyle Busch to Spire. Sounds very promising at this point. I do not expect Kyle Busch to go to Spire in 26. I think he'll honor the contract with Spire at least through the 2026 season. With Rich Schultz Racing. I think he's going to honor the deal with RCR. I don't think he's going to break away from that contract early. I think he stays at RCR for at least one more year. So the driver who likely will take over to 7, I've heard this as well, is expected to be Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez has said multiple times he is expected to remain in the Cup Series next year, and Daniel Suarez is expected to drive that car next year. Now, Daniel Suarez, there is no doubt and no question that he is a more recognizable name and someone that is going to bring a lot more to the table than Justin Haley on the popularity side of things. But here's my issue with Daniel Suarez being in that car. I don't see the performance getting better. I think Daniel Suarez is a lateral move. I think the performance is going to seem very similar to what we've seen from Justin Haley. Yes, Daniel Suarez does, like I said, bring funding and sponsorship to the table. But the problem, like I said, is the fact that I don't really have the most confidence and faith that Suarez is going to get into that car and do a really, really good job. I think that it's going to be very similar. And then very likely, Daniel Suarez is probably going to stay in position that Justin Haley's in, and they're going to be going after someone like a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. or Kyle Busch to take over that seat. And I don't know if Kyle Busch can get in there and do a great job either. So at this point for Daniel, I hope he has a good year with the team. He'll probably be better road courses. He'll probably do a better job there. But outside of that, I don't think he's going to really step up and be absolutely incredible. Outside of that, maybe super speedways. Because Daniel Suarez, while I think he's an all-right driver, we've seen him with good teams and not really do much. So while I think Daniel Suarez will be fine, I don't think he's fully going to set the world on fire and do amazing at this point. So I hope for Suarez he can do good, and I hope for Justin Haley he can find a ride for the 2026 season, can find a really good ride. I think Haley deserves a decent opportunity. It won't be in the Cup Series next year. Will likely be Xfinity trucks. We'll just have to wait and see exactly what team he'll go to in the lower series in 2026 and see where he officially ends up next year. So, that is going to today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get to more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Who do you think takes over to 7 car next year? Let me know thoughts in the comments below. And where do you think Matt DiBenedetto ends up in 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today, if we have any other major news breaks, we'll discuss it live on the channel. On Thursday, we're going to have race picks for the Cup Series race at Talladega, and we're also actually going to have a news video dropping later in the day as well with all the news I didn't cover from the first video. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll probably just do truck race picks for the race at Talladega, and then race review, I should say, and then something else dropping today as well. Then Saturday and Sunday have reactions to the Cup Series and Xfinity Series races from Talladega. We got a lot of content coming on people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ryan Preece, Cletus Farron, Dodge Ram, Will Bryan, Brock Feeney, Cam Waters, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, and all that good stuff on the channel soon. So anyways, like I said, I don't think I was watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.